Hello, my name is Leif Larson from Mission Control on Puget Sound in downtown Seattle. I'm your host for the Salesfolks Podcast, where we interview everyday salespeople who've achieved extraordinary results in the field of sales. I'm super pumped to have today's guest. He is someone who I deeply admire as a sales thought leader and just an all-around wonderful human being. Can you tell us who you are?
Boom! My name is Dan Tyre. Thank you so much. Leif, I should take you on the road with me. That was quite the lead-in, right? And I'm pretty much the luckiest guy in the world. I've been married to the beautiful Amy Tyre for 34 years now. 33 great ones and one mediocre one, which she lets me say from the stage. Right? I've got two socially responsible kids that are launched and doing great stuff in the world. I got a little white dog, a little mutt by the name of Stinson. What do you think of the name Stinson, Leif?
I love Stinson.
Ooh, it's a beach in San Francisco, but it's also a good dog name. I'm a very good dog namer, right? I'm less of a good dog owner, which is why I get a lot of opportunities to name my dogs, right? But if you ever need a dog name, just www.dantyre.com or dantyre@gmail.com. I'll help you name your dog. Maybe that's a startup. Maybe that's a side hustle. Dog naming. I don't know. Cat naming, I'm not so good at, but dog naming, I can do it. Professionally, I've done 5 startups in the last 42 years, selling or managing or leading sales teams for 5 decades. I'm always passionate about helping young salespeople learn the basic skills and improve their game, which is why I'm so excited about this program. And thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely happy to do so. How did you get started in sales?
Ooh, that's a good question. I actually sold books door to door. I know I sound like your grandfather, but I went to school at Colgate University. I was a freshman in 1976. And I had to work my way through college. And I had enough money to go through the first year. Right, and I couldn't go back as a sophomore unless I made some scratch. And back then, you could go to a private university for $2,500, $2,800 a semester, right? Which is kind of amazing. I still have the canceled checks of me writing actual checks to the university to let me back in as a sophomore. Anyway, there was a company by the name of Southwestern Corporation, right, that would go to northeastern colleges and recruit people to sell both Bibles as well as dictionaries door to door. And I worked in the dictionary division. They came to Colgate, and I'm like, okay, you want me to sell books door to door? And they're like, yes, we do. And I'm like, can you make a lot of money? They're like, you can make a lot of money. I'm like, really? And I'm like, how do I learn how to do it? They're like, we send you down to, or you drive down to Nashville, Tennessee. We teach you how to sell these books. Then we put you someplace across the country. Unbeknownst to me, they usually put the people from the East Coast on the West Coast and the people from the West Coast over to the East Coast, which was okay. I got to drive across the country. I got to work in Bellingham, Washington, right, which is amazing. And then Seattle. I lived in University of Puget Sound, right, for July and August. And I knocked on doors. And it was amazing. Oh, my gosh. Number one, is very, very hard to get started, right, because you're putting yourself out there. You're, like, knocking on doors. They still do it, right, which is kind of amazing in 2022. But it was very, very hard to, like, understand and control yourself. Number two, I realized the science of selling, right? Back then, we read The Art of Selling by Tommy Hopkins, right? And Zig Ziglar, a big motivational speaker and writer back in the 1970s. And I met virtually 10,000 people that summer. And it was amazing. Worked from, I think we took a week to learn the process. It wasn't necessarily hard, but it was mentally challenging. And it turned into, it got to be almost fun. After you figured it out, after you understood the science of appealing to people, it was amazing, right? Because you felt like you had control, and it was definitely lucrative. So I went with about 5 folks. 4 of them washed out in the first couple of weeks, right? I didn't really have a choice, so I pushed through. And understanding the process of trying to determine how to get your message across to folks, especially with an emotional, right, presentation, right? You're talking about how to improve kids' education, was transformational. right? And understanding that there's a science underlying selling was unique. It was unique to learn at that early stage and of my career, and definitely influenced me for the rest of my life.
That's absolutely wonderful impetus. Now, I had a grandfather who, during most of his career, he sold cars. And there's sort of been this bad connotation around the concept of sort of the pushy salesperson. Sometimes they even talk about, the used car sales guy. I wanted to ask you, is there nobility in the sales profession?
I think there's nobility in every profession based on integrity and thoughtfulness that the practitioner brings to the relationship. In the old days, right, the people who would lie or cheat just to sell, right, just to make a sale, was prevalent, right? Sales used to be the land of misfit toys, right? If you couldn't code and you couldn't write, you're like, put them over in selling. Because in the that era of selling, it was basically relationship. Take somebody to lunch, take them out to the golf course, build that relationship, and if the product is good enough, they'll just buy, right? That's not the way it works today, right? It is much different today based on a variety of different factors and the growth and complexity of the choices that people make all the time. In the old days, right, the average company had just a very few number of competitors, 4 or 5. Right? Today, there's amazing number of competitors. The HubSpot research shows someplace around 40 to 50 competitors for every single company. Right? In the old days, you had a product that rarely changed, and people bought based on the product or based on that relationship. Today is a completely different product. In the old days, you engaged with somebody. This is kind of interesting. There was a big stratification between sales and marketing. And sales got all of the money, got all the budget, all the glory, right? Because marketing would create the brand and create the lead generation, the demand flow. And then they would hand it over to sales, and sales would engage the customer, qualify the customer, right? Demo the product, answer objections, and bring people into the closing sequence. So they did 90% of the work. So they got 90% of the credit, and 90% of the glory, and 90% of the budget. And it was very interesting back then because if you were sales vice president of sales, right, you would stand up in front of the board of directors and they would say, all right, we gave you $1 million budget last year. What did you do? How did you manage that? And you'd say, well, we hired 4 salespeople and they brought in this amount of money. You'd have the marketing people stand up and they'd say, well, it's kind of squishy. It's not really a direct correlation. And you're thinking, ooh, maybe we should cut back this budget. And marketing was a built-in excuse for sales, right? So if sales did great, it's like, yeah. Sales did bad, it's like marketing's fault. They didn't generate enough leads. Or they generated too many leads, and it was good. Like we didn't know which ones to call, right? And so it was like decidedly different. Today, sales and marketing is all pushed together. Today, sales is very, very different. And the approach that you have to take, or the approach that we strongly recommend you take, is called shelping, right? Sales plus helping. And it's part of the inbound revolution that was started by HubSpot with inbound marketing, and it then expanded to the inbound revolution. In 2018, I wrote a book called Inbound Organization, The Leadership Principles of Inbound. Right? And to be a successful salesperson in 2022, 2023, number one, you got to treat people like human beings. Now, doesn't it seem weird that I have to remind you that you have to teach people to be human beings?
Yeah.
I know, it's amazing, right? But just check out my Twitter feed, right? And you'll see there's constant judgment, shaming, right? Opinions, right? It's crazy, right? But treating people like human beings is like a start. Right? And salespeople need to do that. That means no spamming. That means customization of the right information. That means making sure that you're appealing to somebody, right, to support them as just somebody getting through life. Number 2, we help before we sell. Right? And this is a huge change. People have been doing this for a while. The most successful top 2% salespeople have always helped, offered to assist, right, first. And if somebody calls you and offers to help, Leaf, or offers to sell, which would you prefer?
I would like to help first. I think that forward deploying that value makes me even want to be a customer more.
Of course.
If you're giving me something rather than asking for something from me.
Of course. And so that's the foundation for the inbound sales process, right? Help everybody first, right? And then there's a certain subset of folks who need more advanced help or need more effective help or need to move to the next step. Those people, right, you want to make sure that you're available to enhance the product offer, right? Those people self-select. They're like, Leaf, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? Right? The third thing is that you want to focus. The riches are in the niches, right? Or if in the UK, if you want to go to the beaches, you've got to work the niches, right? And the idea is that generalists, right, are at a disadvantage. People who focus on, like one of the benefits of sales folks is you guys focus just on salespeople. Right? You understand the sales vocabulary, the seasonality, the rhythms, the terms, all of those kind of things. So when salespeople come to your organization, they see you and immediately understand like the values that you provide to that particular group. And in the old days, you could sell to everybody. You still can in certain instances. It's just that if you want a competitive advantage, the more you focus. This is a hard concept to get through to some entrepreneurs because they're like, no, I don't want to limit my opportunity. And my response to that is usually you're not limiting it, right? It's extremely advantageous, right? And you can grow more quickly if you focus on a specific niche market because you'll understand it, you'll have better word of mouth, you'll understand how to grow and develop, right? And become the expert for that particular group. Number three, you want to solve for the customer, which sounds easy to say. It's an easy concept to understand, but it's very difficult to do, right? Because the customer's in different phases. Some customers are in education mode, right? That's why free stuff like blog articles and checklists and positioning papers and descriptions of how people can investigate are extremely advantageous for people who are just trying to tip their toe in the water. Then people move from education to consideration. They're like, I think we can get a competitive advantage, or I think we might be in the market there. That kind of process. Let's consider. Then there's different information you provide people in the consideration mode. And then the decision making mode. We have definitely going to solve this problem. We understand that it's a inhibitor to our growth. We want to make sure that we understand who we're going to look at. And that process, right, is critically important to the inbound selling or inbound sales process. The next thing is you got to look at the data, right? And the data always changes, right? The ability for you to see the delineating factors of what people really want, both attribution of the marketing information as well as what you should touch on, right, to approach. Then the benefit of the senior sales folks, right? And really the challenge is how to relate those features and products and attributes to the problem that people have, right? In the old days, you did a product demo. You remember those days, right? Doing a product demo?
Oh, yeah.
Product demos are different now, right? Now it's more of a discovery call, right? Now I want to cycle in and I want to understand, okay, what do you need? What is your thought process? Where are you at in that education process? And that is hard. Right? Number one, marketing has to differentiate the product and the company at the beginning. Number two, salespeople have to be smart enough to evaluate and look at the intelligence, understand all of the information that's available online to try to understand a little bit more about the company, about the individual, and about where they are in the sales process. In the old days, we started with what we called just raw discovery. Tell me about you, Leaf. Tell me about your company. You can't do that in 2023, right? Now it's all about, okay, Leaf, I saw on your LinkedIn that you're in Seattle. I saw that you were a co-founder or a founder and a CEO of Salesfolks. Tell me about, and then you go into the process. What are you trying to solve? What are the issues? And your ability to ask those right questions in the discovery call will differentiate you in the rest of the sales process. The discovery call in 2023 is the new close call, right? And if you ask the right questions, right, at the right time, in the right fashion, right, then that prospect is going to buy from you.
Yeah, that's great insight. And aren't customers more prone now than ever before to really be coming in from the side of the funnel? You really don't know where they're at in the process, but very often they've actually done a lot more homework than what you probably would have expected, like if it was 10 years ago, right?
100%.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. In the old days, right, you had to talk to the salesperson to get basic information. How much does it weigh? Will it fit in the back of my pickup truck? Can I carry it upstairs? Does it come in purple? All those kind of things, right? Today, all of that is done online. That's why it's not sales, it's not marketing, it's Smarketing. Sales and marketing push together, right? Because marketing has to do a good job of visibility and awareness of providing the basic information. For most B2B sales, it's somewhere between 65 and 95%, 99%, of research is done online before somebody wants to talk to a salesperson. In some of the industries that we work in, right, it's 100%. People are like, I don't want to talk to a salesperson until I want a discount, right? And then the salesperson has to be smart enough to understand, okay, that's just what the customer wants. How can we make it easy, right? And you and I were talking in our briefing meeting about the HubSpot flywheel, right? As a executive of HubSpot, right, super impactful about how the HubSpot flywheel impacts the sales process for today. And the flywheel starts with the customer at the center, right? And the basis for the HubSpot flywheel is your customers are as important as your sales team for generating new customers. And it makes perfect sense. In the old days, it was buyer beware. If you bought the wrong thing, right, you could talk with somebody in the company, but like it was your fault. Today, it's seller beware. If you're a seller and you're bringing on people who are not good fits, right, first of all, you're going to hear about it all over social media. Second of all, you're going to ruin your reputation. Third of all, what people are looking for is quicker time to value, right? There's so much stuff, right, and so much confusion and noise that people are looking for. This is my problem. Number one, do you understand my problem? Number two, can you solve my problem? Number three, right, are you the right person to solve my problem at the right time? And so addressing that, understanding that, being able to diagnose that, and then being able to explain that, right, is extremely important. That is hard, right?
Yeah.
The reason why there's so much nobility in the sales profession is that there are lots of folks, although sales is changing quite drastically, right? Unless you're moving towards understanding and shelping, sales and helping, right? It's likely that those relationship kind of salespeople will disappear because of the reasons that you just talked about, right? Relationships are still important, and every business is still a people business, right? But people want to understand how they can solve their problem quickly and efficiently, and a salesperson is like a surgeon, right? Understanding and doing the research, understanding and their product features, making the determination, is this a good fit, right? Explaining why it's a good fit. This is the hardest thing in sales, and this is where the nobility really shines through. Is if it's not a good fit, you got to tell the customer, no, you should go buy one of my competitors, right? You should go and do something different. I'm not going to sell it to you. And in the book, The Inbound Organization, that I wrote with Todd Hockenberry, there's a whole chapter 26, about just that happening, which was always difficult for me because I always looked at it like maybe we can fit this in and there's a possibility, and that's not the way it works, right? The right way is to assess the customer needs, and if they're not ready, tell them, you're not ready yet. You have to do X, Y, and Z, or you're better off going to a competitor, which ultimately builds your brand, right, is the right thing to do, helps engage folks in a way in which it's more advantageous for you, for your flywheel, and for the customer. And that flywheel with the customer at the center, right, that's the references you get. That's the ability. That's another difference, Leaf. In the old days, we gave references at the end. People had already decided, and they just wanted to make sure that they weren't making a mistake. And you remember giving out references like 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you did it all the time. And did people check the references? Kind of, sometimes, maybe. right? But did you ever get a bad reference? When somebody gave you a reference, did anybody ever give you a bad reference?
No.
Of course not, because it's like a nit. It's just something that was part of the process that didn't really provide value. Today, we offer these customer experiences early in the process. You're like, you know what? You should talk with Paula first. You know what? Talk with my friend Olivia. Okay, Steve just went through this process. Why don't you have a conversation with him about what he found? And the flywheel is all about your customer experience being your biggest competitive advantage, right? Because today, products change so quickly. In the old days, you bought a product because it had a particular feature, and the competition weren't going to develop that feature for years, right? Today, everybody has the same thing. And if they don't have it, they're going to have it pretty soon. The pace of development with cloud-based software, the process of people understanding and continue iteration, even in industrial and manufacturing industries, is so fast-paced that really what people rely on is understanding your integrity, right? You put it as nobility, the honesty, and building that relationship, which is completely different than it used to be.
Thank you so much. For our listeners, please go to hubspot.com/flywheel. They have a great content page that's built there if you want to understand the flywheel model versus the conventional sort of linear
sales funnel.
Linear sales funnel.
Yeah, everybody understands a funnel. The problem is when we do our consulting, we ask CEOs, right? Do you like the sales funnel? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you like being in a sales funnel? They're like, we like our sales funnel. I'm like, yeah, but do you like being in a sales funnel? They're like, no. And why don't you like being in a sales funnel, Leaf?
Well, for me, I grew up in farm country, so when I think of funnel, I think of something that's sticky and full of oil. I grew up around farm equipment, so that's my number one reason I've never liked funnels are things that get your hands dirty.
Awesome. And you lose control, right? When you're in a funnel, it's a qualification process where you start at the top, and it's very generic and doesn't ascribe to where people are, right? It's more of treating you like a number, right, or a category rather than a human being, right? Which defies the first premise of inbound selling or the inbound organization, treating people like human beings. And in the old days, you followed the process. This is a very interesting transition just in the last few years, right? People would say, okay, I need to buy marketing automation software. I'm going to go in, I'm going to look at the what's available, and then I'm going to purchase something. Today, some people will get very, very excited about looking at marketing automation. They'll get all excited. They're like, this is what I need to do. And then they'll stop. And they'll move on to something else, right? And then they won't do anything, no activity for 9 months, 12 months, sometimes years. And then they'll pick it up again and they'll swarm around solving that problem. And this may have happened previously and we couldn't report on it, but now you can track lead intelligence of people coming to your website. And sometimes you'll see this swarming process. And as near as we can tell, it's just based on all of the things that people are trying to manage in their day-to-day life, either B2C or B2B, right? But it's a very, very real thing. And as a salesperson, if you have that lead intelligence, lead tracking, and you could say, Leaf, wait a second, you did all of this research in 2019, and then you stopped, and then you did all this research in 2021, and then you stopped, and now you're coming back. What's changed? Right? Now, all of a sudden, it's a completely different sales process. Now, all of a sudden, you've recognized that there are previous experiences, that somebody may have learned that process. And that's what solving for the customer is all about. Delivering the right information, right? Recognizing that they've had some level of experience and then leaning into that, right? Where you're saying, okay, you probably have the basics down. Let's move to the next step of specifically what you're trying to solve so we can make sure that you're making an intelligence decision.
That's great. I once heard the phrase a need state aperture. So it's like a little opening and it opens and closes with the customers. And so you're trying to capture it when it's like back open again by using that intelligence. That's
single most important thing is that we see it all the time, right? At HubSpot, we try to engage with everybody and just see how we can help, right? The first step for our BDRs and account executives is like, this is who we are, this is what we do, and how can we help you? Right, and it's a very successful way, based on our own personal experience, of getting visibility and awareness. Number two, understanding where people are. And what we're constantly trying to do is trying to find them when they're in moving from education to consideration mode, right? And if we do, right, then and we have all of the information of their previous interactions, the people who evaluated previously, the people who are involved in the process, then it can be a very successful and efficient sales process, right? It's very detail oriented. It's focused on results. It's time to value. And it can go very, very smoothly based on not having to reinvent the wheel, focusing on all of the background and information that you've received before, synthesizing it, and then presenting it in a way in which you build the foundation of trust. You make a determination if it's a good fit, and then you define specific steps, not necessarily so the customer can buy it, but so the customer can buy it, implement it, and get the ROI or benefit, right, from the purchase. And in the old days, salespeople left as soon as they closed the deal, right? You never saw us again, right? Today, salespeople want to be involved in understanding how to build that relationship, because it assists in either selling more product or adding more value.
You know, I saw in the HubSpot report that was just released, and I was finishing up reading it this weekend. It's great. It's like 50 slides long and just a ton of wonderful intel there, so I highly recommend people go read it. That with the potential economic downturn that could be around the corner here, and I know that we're sort of projecting out there, and we don't want to wish a recession on anyone, but the reality is that there's some potential dark clouds on the horizon. Leaders are looking to be able to maintain through providing more services to customers. So rather than necessarily just saying, how do we build a new customer, how do we do more with our existing customers? And so what you were just talking about there, I think that that's also an interesting aspect of this, is maintaining some continuity with that customer. Makes a lot of sense if you want to try and provide more services to them and maybe build the size of the relationship with existing customers.
I always recommend, it's a good observation, Leif. I always recommend that executives call their customers. I probably talk with 10 customers per week, right? I'm an executive sponsor for a handful of HubSpot accounts. And then in my board advisory and board member work, right, I'll periodically talk with our customers. And the reason is I want to thank them for the business, right? And I want to pick up the phone, and I want to send them an email, thank you for the business. That seems a little less human. I want to pick them up. If I could go take them to breakfast, I would do that, right? Face-to-face is always, not always, but in many cases, more impactful than just a phone call. But a phone call is much more impactful than just an email. And anybody can send an email, and you and I probably don't need a whole lot more email, right, every day. But a phone call, right, or a video where I'm saying, Leif, thanks so much for your business this year. Right, we appreciate your partnership, and we want to make sure we are continuing to build into 2023. Here's my cell phone. If there's ever anything that needs to be brought to my attention, let me know, and I will respond within 48 hours. And we value that relationship. And if there's ideas that you have or things that you want to do that are more important, or if there's an area that you think we can help, just let me know. And by bear hugging, right, your customers, right, by making sure that they know, number one, who you are. Number two, that you value their business. Number three, you want to expand that relationship. It's amazing, and it happens very rarely. You'd think that more people would do that. Call people and thank them for their business. But I think in the go-go years of the last 10 or 12 years, people have forgotten how valuable that is. And in an economic downturn, that's where it comes to the forefront. like circling the wagons and making sure that your customers know who you are, know that you want the business, and are willing to let you know if something goes awry.
Thank you. Not to change direction here, but sales is unlike most other departments in that a pretty meaningful aspect, component of the compensation is attached to performance. So we have these, commissions and bonuses, and does that economic model make sense given these developing trends with solution selling and some of these approaches that are espoused by HubSpot? Is that model?
It's interesting. I've seen a lot of different options on this. First of all, I've seen studies that say a commission compensation program works against customer satisfaction, specifically because it's hard for many salespeople to overcome that bias and not close the deal when it's in the customer's best interest not to close the deal. I have seen sales executives let salespeople pick their own quota, which I thought was insane at the time, but worked out very, very nicely for this particular entrepreneur. And it depends on the value the salesperson is bringing to the table. Like a considered sale is different than a transactional sale, where price and availability is probably the most important input. A good salesperson should bring in 3 to 5 times more than they're making in revenue. I was just working with Todd Hockenberry, my co-author for the Inbound organization. And in the manufacturing and industrial world, right, it's 10 to 15 times revenue because their margins are smaller than SaaS software, right? And we were doing some research in regard to what the profile was for sales compensation for SaaS. And in that world, it's 3 to 5 times, depending on where your gross profit margins are. So if it's a considered sale where tech expertise, industry knowledge, problem solving, trust is involved, I would say, yes, it's worth every penny. In many companies, right, salesperson or leading salesperson makes more money than the CEO. And probably worthwhile, right? Because if you're not generating that revenue, and because although it may look simple, right, senior level salespeople are hard to find, right, hard to keep, and investing in that individual relationship is as important as anything that you can do.
Great. I like to end the podcast with your pitch. Like, what is your pitch? What are you selling these days, and how is that going for you?
All right, so I don't really pitch, right? I like to help, right? Which I've done over the last 15 years as an early member of HubSpot, right? Obviously, HubSpot's the leader in number one CRM for scaling companies, right? We have the inbound front office, which is marketing automation software, operations software, service software, sales software, all built on the free HubSpot CRM. All of our HubSpot products start free, which is a great way to introduce the concepts of helping before selling, right? I work in a marketing capacity at HubSpot now in HubSpot Academy, running the cohort-based learning program, which is great. Right. So if you're not familiar with HubSpot Academy, please Google it. There are 400 classes and lessons, all for free, right? Which is a great introduction to the HubSpot process, the HubSpot philosophy of helping, not selling, and assisting folks in learning about both sales as well as marketing options. I work with several of my angel investments. I'm an angel investor in about 30 portfolio companies, and we help them scale their sales teams, right? One is Delphina Intelligent Pregnancy Care, right? So we're introducing this data analysis process to pregnancy programs. Navati is one of my angel investments. That's Amelia Wilcox. It's a mental health app. And then we help dozens of entrepreneurs figure out the best way to scale, right? Focus on what you control, Sales process takes a little bit more time, build relationships, right? My brand is, all right, whatever we can do to help you, right? As a super connector, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I understand where you're coming from. I want to make sure that you're focused on doing more good for the universe, and then we want to do whatever we can to help.
That's absolutely a wonderful ethos that you live by, and having known you for a while, Dan, I got to say, you practice what you preach, and you bring a lot of joy to this world every day. You're constantly offering to help people, and you follow through on that, and so kudos. You're just an absolutely wonderful person. Special thanks to our guest, Dan, for taking time out of his incredibly busy schedule.
Ooh, I like that.
And we want to say thank you to all of our listeners. Now get out there and help customers make impactful purchase decisions. Thank you so much.